I'm Andy with Living Green Barrie. Yeah, we are Barrie's only registered environmental charity. We've been doing this since about 1991, so over 30 years. So basically, if there's been a green initiative in over the past 3 decades in Barrie, we likely started it or were at least part of it. But of all the initiatives that we could focus our scant resources on, we knew that climate change is the most critical issues. We made that the highlight of what we do, the main part of our mission. We have focused our attention on climate change, and we know that it's a very big issue. We know that we all have a part to play, and for our little charity, we're trying to connect people up with climate change in a hopeful and meaningful manner. We want to bring climate change out of just the responsibility of government and into the local and household level by helping people understand what they can personally do to reduce their carbon footprint. Because reaching net zero carbon emissions by 2050 is very ambitious, and it's one that's going to require a substantial effort from everyone. All right, so here we have this massive global problem that Little Living Green is trying to bring down to a local level through behavior changes, which is not an easy feat because behavior changes don't happen overnight. They require a big effort. Messaging needs to be simple, clear, targeted, repeated over and over again before people actually start to change how they act. And you see this, remember, like at some point, depending on how old you are, you can remember that you could smoke a cigarette in a movie theater. These kind of behavior changes happen not just through legislation, but through repeated campaigns. So we release our 12 actions for climate, and our plan is to assign each one of these actions to a specific month of the year, then focus all of our events and messaging within that month, then repeat it again the next year and the next year after that until we start to actually see some behavior changes. So our 12 actions start in January by just asking people to simply be hopeful and engaged. In March, we asked people to reduce their waste, and we had the library. In April, we got people to start thinking about naturalizing their yards and consider protecting pollinators, and we had a workshop about that. In May, we planted a ton of trees. Tread Lightly in June was all about rethinking how we move around in our city. We held a fun bicycle poker ride with Firebird Community Cycle, as well as a workshop for people considering making the switch to electric. All right. Next month is September, where we focus on food and local food security in particular, and we're hosting our second annual Gala in the Woods. This fundraising of gala event is a fancy dinner out in the forest of Springwater Park, and we have hired a top chef to do a all very high gourmet menu consisting of foods that were all produced locally. It's a fun night of celebration of all the great things that are happening in this area, including nominating businesses for Green Business Awards so we can reward people from doing the right behavior. So if you know any business that's doing something, even if it's a small thing, please consider nominating them for one of our business awards. So we'd love to get more people involved. Make sure that you subscribe to our newsletter if you're not already, and follow us on social. Obviously, you found us, so you probably already are. Join us to plant trees every spring and fall. Again, the Green Business Award and the Gala. We're always looking for volunteers, especially for helping us with the bingo, or maybe you're interested in joining us as joining our board of directors. And largely, we just want you to be radically hopeful and imagine the world that you want to see. So that leads us to what we're doing here today. It is August, and our climate action is to power down. So in addition to making sure that your house is using less energy and conserving more of the energy that you do use, one of the many things that you can do to reduce your carbon footprint is to go solar. So for that, with that, I will hand it over to our guests for the next little bit. Thank you.
Yeah, I was just saying thanks for having me, Living Green Barrie, and I'm really happy that we could do this. I mean, because the path forward is conversation and education, and that's exactly what we're doing here today. So I always enjoy that. And you're totally right. Power down is what we need to do. We need to use less energy, because at the end of the day, when you use less energy, you're lowering your carbon footprint. You're saving money because you need less solar panels. And so it's a win-win for everybody if we can just use less energy. But one way to get energy that you do need in a sustainable, money-saving fashion is solar. And that's what Shift does. What are we now? We've just expanded to Ontario, to be totally transparent. We're a BC company that has expanded across Canada because the solar boom is on. It's happening, and we've been doing solar since 2017 here in BC. And we started on Vancouver Island. We grew to Vancouver. We expanded to Nova Scotia first, and as of 3 months ago, we expanded to Ontario and Alberta and New Brunswick. So it just goes to show 15 employees 2 years ago. Now we're up to 70 employees. And I came on 2 years ago from broadcasting. Actually, I was in radio and television. And I hit 40 and had my midlife crisis. And I thought, what do I want to do that, is going to leave a better world for my kids? And I've always been a big fan of solar energy ever since my wife gave me a little solar panel to charge my cell phone when we're camping. I know, taking a cell phone camping, that's not cool, but and I just thought, man, this ball of fire up there in the sky, let's just use this light and make electricity. Why aren't we doing this more? And so I reached out to the owner of Shift, and he said, "Hey, it sounds like you're great at engaging with people, and you're passionate about solar. Come on board and work for Shift." And ever since then, it's been 2 years now. I've kind of been carving out my own role, and as community manager, my whole mantra, if you want to say, is education. Because when people learn from you, they promote you. And again, education is the path forward when it comes to solar. So that's what I'm here to do today, just to have a conversation about solar. I'm not a sales guy. We have solar consultants in the company, of course, but my job is solely just to have a conversation and educate people about solar. I'm not an electrician. I have a pretty solid base of knowledge when it comes to solar and some of the tech side of it. But any questions I can't answer today, I would be happy to take to our engineers and our electricians and get you the answers that you need. I'll just start sharing my screen, and I'm just going to do about a 30-minute PowerPoint, and I'll try to be as animated as I can, and then after we can maybe jot your questions down, and after we can go through the chat and discuss more about solar. So if everyone's okay with that, I will share my screen. Okay, Solar 101. All about solar energy, solar PV energy, not solar thermal. Of course, PV is photovoltaics, photo meaning light, and voltaics or volt meaning electricity. So turning light into electricity. And one part I really enjoy about my job actually is the little wow moments, because there is such an opportunity to educate Canadians. Ontario, I would almost say is ahead of a lot of Canada when it comes to solar, but there's still an amazing opportunity to educate Canadians about solar. And a lot of people immediately say like, "Oh, my place gets so hot in the summer. It's great for solar PV." Well, it's great for solar thermal, but of course, solar PV, you don't need heat, you just need light. So today it's all about solar energy, solar PV. Just a quick look, sun in Barrie and the surrounding area. To find something in Barrie specific was actually quite challenging. I did receive an email earlier from one of the members. So I was looking into it. I found the area, Peterborough and is not that far away. It's kind of central. So I'm going to guess Barrie's kind of in that 2,050 hours a year of sunshine, which is actually pretty good. If you compare it to the rest of Canada, it's kind of right in the middle of the pack. Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto. And what's really cool is that Berlin, Germany, in Milan, Italy, they have been using solar actively on homes for 30 years. So it kind of dispels that whole myth where, oh, it's Canada, solar doesn't really work there. Well, actually, it does. And that's why these cities around the world have been using it. And again, Canada's in its infancy when it comes to mainstream use of solar. Some of us still have this idea that the person that's using solar is the person that lives up on the hill and they have a tinfoil hat maybe and forget Big Brother, I'm doing my own thing, I'm off grid. We do a lot of off grid, but it's not that way anymore. And the reason is because costs have come way down. It is now, 10 years ago, a solar panel was $1,000. Now it's 300 bucks. So costs have come way down, and of course, we want to do our part for the environment. So essentially, it's kind of nice that both sides, if you will, are meeting in the middle. You've got the investors and the people that want to make a lot of money looking at solar because they can do that now. Then, of course, you've got the other side saying, well, climate action, we need to take climate action. We're too late. We need to get on this now. And so they're meeting in the middle. And because of that, solar's experiencing a lot of exciting growth. So as you can see, sun hours, Barrie and Simcoe County and that whole area is right in the middle of the pack when it comes to across Canada and in fact around the world. Super basic solar 101. I do an in-school presentation with kids, actually. I started an in-school program with Shift, and I go to schools and I engage kids. I have these little solar cars that I bring, and we use flashlights to race them. And one thing I do is I get the kids to stand up and pretend they're my solar panel, and the classroom lights are actually the sun. And when the lights are on, they're moving because that's what's happening with solar. Basically, you've got photons in light, in sunlight, obviously, they're very powerful. And when those photons crash into the solar panel at a basic level, they're moving the electrons. And that movement of the electrons, positive, negative, is generating electricity. It's captured by a semiconductor. It is DC electricity, and then it has to be converted or inverted using an inverter to AC electricity, which is what we all use in our homes. But at a basic level, photons crashing into electrons, electrons start moving, or the kids in the classroom start freeze dancing, and that generates electricity. And so that's what's happening in terms of the basics of it. Two terms you're going to hear a lot of: kilowatts and kilowatt hours. Of course, kilowatt hours is what we all use when we're looking at our energy bills and our consumption. We used 58 kilowatt hours this month or whatever it works out to. And kilowatts is the size of a solar system. So if you're going to put a solar system on your home, you might need a 10 kilowatt system or an 11 kilowatt system or a 6 kilowatt system. Again, it kind of goes back to that the less energy you use, the smaller system you need, the faster return on investment, and the less upfront money you'll have to spend. So that's kilowatts. So the difference is kilowatts is power at a time and kilowatt hours is power over time. A 1 kilowatt heater produces uses 1 kilowatt. A 1 kilowatt heater running over an hour is equal to 1 kilowatt hour. So in ideal conditions, of course, that's incredibly rare, but if the sun was perfectly right on the angles and the panels were great, an 8 kilowatt solar array in ideal conditions might produce 8 kilowatts at that moment. But of course, over the day, it might produce 20 kilowatt hours or more. How it works with your home, basically panels go on the roof. And then, like I mentioned, they produce DC electricity that is inverted to AC electricity. There's different ways to do that. There's a string inverter system, which is kind of like old school Christmas lights, where all the solar panels are all on a string. Downside to that, of course, is one panel's shaded, not producing, they're all going to be shaded. So what they've done to combat that is they've got two systems: a string inverter system with what they put on the back called optimizers, and these optimizers essentially make every panel an individual. So if one panel is shaded or not working, the rest are still gonna function on a string inverter system. And then what happens is all of the electricity from the panels goes to one big inverter that sits on the side of your house, and that changes it all into AC, and that heads to your main electrical panel for your home. The system that Shift installs a lot of, it's something that we believe is the best way to go, are microinverters. And essentially what happens is you've got your solar panels on the roof, and under the solar panels, there's one microinverter for every two panels. And so the electricity from the DC electricity from the panels is going into the inverter on the roof and coming out AC. The cool part about this is you don't have DC going into your home. It's all AC coming off the roof right into your home, into your attic, making its way to that main electrical panel. Once it's inverted to AC, it goes to your main electrical panel. Your house uses the electricity first that you are producing. So your TV, whatever you're using at home, uses that solar energy first, and any excess energy is then sent through the meter. Of course, I'm talking with grid-tied solar, sent through the meter to your utility provider. And that is what's called net metering. And that's why you don't need batteries to go solar. Thankfully, we have and this is across Canada, the utility companies provide what's called net metering. So you bank your excess solar energy into the grid. It's kept track via credits. Right now, it's 1-to-1 kilowatt hour credits. So you produce 1 kilowatt hour of solar energy, you get a credit of 1 kilowatt hour for solar energy. And so essentially, why it works in Canada is because you are producing most of your energy in the spring and the summer and using it to get through those darker days. And in our proposals, when we're doing a complementary proposal, it's all broken down. So you might be 100% solar powered. That doesn't mean you're using solar energy all year. It means you're making all of the energy that you consume in one year in spring and the summer and the sunny days. And then in the winter, you are drawing from the grid, but you're actually using those credits that you already made up. So that's a big wow moment I find in a lot of conversations. People assume you need a battery. You don't. And that's why it saves you a ton of money because batteries are very expensive as well. So predominantly right now at Shift, we're installing grid tie, no batteries, just solar arrays up on the house. This is an example of a bill. It keeps track. Your outflow is what you're sending to the utility company. Your previous balance looks like they had 132. So that's their credit available right now. And then inflow is what you're bringing from the utility company. You do the math and you have a credit of 1,047 kilowatt hours. Now, before we dive more into exactly how that works, talk more about the house and what makes a good solar array and things to consider. I just wanted to talk a little bit about solar growth in Canada and why Shift has gone from 15 people to 75 people and growing. In 2010, solar capacity was around 221 megawatts. It's now upwards of 3,500 megawatts. To put that into perspective, we're at about in Canada in installed solar, we're around 3 gigawatts of installed solar, which is great. But you look around the world, specifically at China, who is leading, and they're at 300 gigawatts. Now, of course, more people and they're way ahead of us. They've been doing it for a long time. But there's room to catch up. And that's exactly what's happening in this country right now. And of course, as Andy mentioned, I believe off the beginning, this very aggressive goal to be net zero by 2050, that is also helping to push. And of course, because the government wants to make that happen, they're putting in incentives and rebates. There's the federal Greener Homes program, 0% interest loan. I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. And the top provinces, Alberta, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, kind of the sunny, those prairie provinces, they're leading. And then you look at Ontario for sure is next. BC coming up behind, New Brunswick and the Atlantic provinces. This is one of my favorite stats is around, right now it's about 500,000 people working in renewable energy. That's not just solar, that's wind, that's solar, geothermal. Around 500,000 Canadians working in that field. By 2050, that's going to be 2.7 million. Now we're going to lose, they say, around 1.5 million in fossil fuels. That's okay. They're going to move into renewable energy to make that 2.7 million. And then at the end, you do some quick math, and roughly, this is based on a Clean Energy Canada study, 700,000 jobs will be created in clean energy, more so than we have now in fossil fuels. So there's lots of opportunity. I'm one of them, coming from my previous career and now into the solar field, which is really exciting because terrestrial radio and television was shrinking that industry. So some challenges with solar. I like to touch on these because, in a lot of these conversations, people say, well, yeah, what do you got to mine, Chris? So answer me that one. And I say, okay, well, let's talk about mining and recycling. Yeah, we mine for renewable energy. That's not just solar. We mine for wind. We have to manufacture these things. So we do mine about 7 million tons a year. But when you compare that to fossil fuels, where we're mining 15 billion tons a year, yes, we're mining, but it is a considerable amount less. We're still using fossil fuels to manufacture and transport solar panels, get them to people's homes. We did just get a fleet of EV vehicles at Shift, which we're really excited about. But we're still using fossil fuels. And this is cool. They've figured out, somebody above my pay grade has figured out that it takes roughly 1 to 2 years of a solar panel's working life to create enough good energy to offset the bad energy that was needed to create it. Wonderful. 1 to 2 years, and then it's kind of made up for that bad energy. And the solar panel is going to last at least 30 years. Shift warranties the production on all of our systems and panels for 25 years. That's how confident we are. There's no moving parts in solar panels, maintenance free virtually. So we stand by that. And so 1 to 2 years, you made up for the bad energy needed to create it, and you got at least 28 years where you're laughing. And the other side, of course, is recycling. It's 300 times more to recycle a solar panel than it is to throw it in the landfill, which sucks. We don't want that to happen because, yeah, there's minerals and things in the solar panel that we don't want to be putting back in the landfills. And people are realizing that. And because solar is booming now, it's kind of, I look at it kind of like bottles. We weren't recycling those 20 years ago, but all of a sudden we realize, hey, this is a business. We can recycle, can help the planet, and hate to say it, but somebody can make money. And the same thing is going to happen with solar panels. The more solar panels that come to their end of the life in the next 20 to 30 years, somebody's going to have is a business opportunity for someone to say, hey, yeah, pay me a bunch of money and I'll recycle those for you. And then once we figure out recycling the solar panels, well, then the mining is going to drop as well, and we'll figure out that challenge. Some benefits for the environment, of course. Roughly speaking, 8 solar panels will provide 40,000 kilometers of range if you got an EV. 16 solar panels is equivalent to planting 46 trees, and 24 solar panels, and you're pulling 2 gas cars from the road each year. Reasons solar's booming. Energy independence is a big one. In some provinces, especially on the East Coast, where the cost of energy is skyrocketing, Nova Scotia just had 2 rate increases, 7% each year. In BC, we're still pretty lucky. But there's a lot of the cost of energy is only going up. We all know that. We can all agree on that. And when you go solar, you're essentially, yes, you're paying an upfront cost, 20,000 bucks, 25,000 bucks, but you're essentially locking in your energy cost for the next 25 plus years. Whereas without solar, you're just at the whim of the utility companies. It's going up, whatever they say it's going up to. So there's energy independence that people are really looking for, and solar is an option. Earn credits, that's net metering, what we talked about. There is talk of that changing, unfortunately, as more and more people go solar across Canada. They're looking at changing it to something called self-generation or net billing. And it looks like you're not going to get the 1-to-1, which you get right now, which is great. So it'll be send 1 kilo, produce 1.2 kilowatt hours of energy, get 1 credit. So it's all something to do with, obviously they need money and extra money to keep the infrastructure of the grid up so that we can all use the grid. So I understand that to a certain point, but right now is a good time to take advantage of that 1-to-1 credit. Annualized return compared to a GIC, they say investing in solar can generate up to 10% a year. Which is a big bonus. And sell your home for more. Immediately you put solar on your house, it's going to add at least the cost of the value. And in my opinion, that's only going to change again as the years go by because, 10 years ago when you were looking for a home, nobody was asking for an EV charger on their home. And I believe so, and now they are, and I believe solar is the same. Right now, nobody's asking, oh, does this house have a form of self-generation? Give it 5, 10 years, and it's going to be a desire for a lot of people. Oh, how does this home self-generate? What? It's got solar. Boom. And then, of course, contribute to a greener future. It's got its challenges, but at the end of the day, it is still contributing to a cleaner future for everyone. As I mentioned, some incentives to discuss the Canada Greener Homes Initiative. That was a great $5,000 grant, and the grant ran out earlier than they thought because of the uptake, but the loan is still there. So it's a 0% interest, 10-year payback, up to $40,000 loan. So what a lot of our clients do, some use it, like myself in my situation when my wife and I go solar, young family, we don't have $25,000 lying around just to do it. We're going to use this loan, and it's 0%, 10-year payback. My payments work out to $166 a month. Because I'm really lucky, I have a south-facing roof, lots of room for solar panels. I can be 100% solar powered again over the year. And so essentially what that means is I'm paying $166 for a loan, but I will no longer be paying the $150 I'm paying right now for the cost of energy a month. So really, I can get solar using this 0% interest loan for $16 a month. And in 5 years or less, when those rates go up, all of a sudden I'm breaking even. And then a couple of years go by, the rates go up again, and I'm now making money even before that 10 years is up. So that loan is great, and a lot of people have taken advantage of it. Unfortunately, to my understanding, there's no provincial Ontario rebates like we're seeing. British Columbia just added a $5,000 rebate. Nova Scotia has a $3,000 rebate. Same with New Brunswick. We're not seeing that in Ontario. So start the petitions. Let me know where I can sign. And then businesses is a huge chapter. Shift was focused mostly on residential, but we're seeing a lot of interest from business now because there's a federal investment tax credit of up to 30% for retrofits, energy retrofits with businesses. So we're getting a lot of questions from businesses now. Rough costs. It's really hard to give a rough cost because there's so many variables when it comes to, we do totally free quotes because because of this warranty that we have, 25 years, if you don't produce what we say your system will produce, we actually cut you a check. So we want to make sure in that free quote that we are signing on the dotted line with that it's as accurate as possible. We don't want to walk up and say, oh yeah, 100% here, just throw panels down, we're good. We're with you for the long haul. We don't plan on going anywhere. So the rough ballpark everyone wants to hear, we came up with 9,000 to 15,000 for a 4 to 5 kilowatt system. Average home, so my home, my wife, I have 2 daughters. They're not old enough, to be using blow dryers and hair straighteners just yet. But right now, 11 kilowatt system, 12 kilowatt system would give us 100% solar power. We don't have an EV, but that's where we're at. So 16 to 28, and then the larger home system, 12 to 18, 25 to $50,000 is what you're looking at. And of course, everything except that 40 to 50 range could be put on a 0% interest loan over 10-year payback. Ways to save, like we talked about off the top, just use less energy. Because when we do a quote, we ask for your annual consumption for the last year. So if your consumption is 7,000 kilowatt hours a year, all of a sudden you're down into that kind of smaller home or lower average system. Maybe you're $16,000-$17,000 and you're good. So again, use less energy. And then maximizing capacity on a single roof. So sometimes, if your roof has lots of peaks and valleys and dormers, we can do 2 panels here, 3 panels here, 4 panels here. Well, every time we do that, it's more wiring, more material, more cost. So again, I'm really lucky on my roof. It's just one flat south facing. So I can just put 22 panels just on one great open spot. So that saves me a lot of money. And then we do recommend, if you're replacing your roof, great time to go solar because the panels will last, again, 30 years. And if you have to redo your roof in that time, there is a cost, 10 to 15% of the initial cost to pull the panels off, redo the roof, and then put the panels back on. Solar panels actually do lengthen the part of the roof that they're on because UV is the #1 damage of shingles, at least. And of course, the UV is no longer hitting the shingles. So they will kind of buy you some time as well, which is interesting. What makes a great solar array? No obstructions. We need light. That's how solar works. We need light. So big trees, big buildings. If you got a lot of shade, then your home, might not be a good fit for solar. Roof orientation up here in Canada. South is ideal because that's where the sun is all the time. But east and west work as well. And the more efficient the panels are, our senior project engineer put panels on the north side of his roof because his slope is so low. And they're 500 watt panels, I think. So he's actually getting decent production. Just there's enough light hitting those north side panels. But yeah, south is ideal, east and west. Room on the roof, like I talked about, just they need space. They're about, I think, 3.5 feet by 6.5 feet. So you just need space to put those panels. And what we're finding here is that a lot of new developers are saying your home is solar ready, but then there's a lot of peaks and valleys, and all they've done is run some conduit from your attic to maybe your mechanical room. It doesn't even go to your main electrical panel. And so we come in and we're like, okay, yeah, I mean, it's great. There's a conduit, but we still have to run the wire from this to the electrical. Or we come in, we say, yeah, it's great, it's solar ready, but where do you want us to put the panels? Like you've got peaks and valleys, or they've got skylights. Great to get some light into your house. I totally love that. But that's where the panels would go. So can't put them there. Plumbing stacks. Sometimes you get big old plumbing stacks and vents, and you don't want to cover those. You can cut plumbing stacks down, and it's totally fine. We do that. But just something to think about, to make a home solar ready. So right now we're retrofitting homes. What we would love to see is homes being built with solar in mind. And I'll talk about that in a little bit as well. And the angle, everyone says, what's the best angle? Well, the best angle is equal to your latitude. That is ideal. But of course, in Canada, we're 45, 46, 47 degrees, 42, whatever it is. And what they figured out is that the cost of the materials to get your panel to sit up, 47 degrees on your roof destroys any return of investment possible, because of course then it becomes a sail on your roof. You've got to look at anchor points. And so honestly, what is ideal is just putting it on your roof and matching whatever the slope is, even if it's a flat roof. We do flat roofs all the time. You just give the panels a little 10% angle, nothing more, because again, you don't want them to become a sail. And people see a great production. So just match the angle of your roof. If you're doing a ground mount, which is a lot of money because of the concrete and the materials and the metal, but then you could go to that 47, whatever you wanted. But most cost-effective way, best return on investment is just match your roof. And breaker size, that's another thing. A lot of old homes in Canada, and so a lot of homes are maybe 100 amp service and a 100 amp bus bar. And the bus bar is what all the breakers click into. So if you have a 100 amp service and a 100 amp bus bar, you're going to get 12 panels, and that's maxed because I'm not an electrician, maybe someone in here is, but there's an 80% max that you have to follow for electrical code. So you can only do 12 panels. But if you have a 125 amp bus bar, all of a sudden you get 30 panels. That's even with a 100 amp service too. It's just that bus bar, more electricity they can hold. 200 amp service, you're good. 225, 48 panels. So just to give you an idea, something to think about. A lot of times we have to go into the old home and we don't have to do a service upgrade, but we just have to do a panel upgrade, which means we just have to change that bus bar that the breakers are plugging into. And so that might cost, $3,000, where the service upgrade, you're $7,000, $8,000, $9,000. So it makes a big difference just doing a panel swap. You don't need to up your service all the time. And again, it all comes down to use. What are you consuming? Design, this is a program called Aurora. Essentially what happens is someone reaches out to us. They say, hey, I want to go solar. Help me out, Shift. We say, okay, great. Address, please. Give us your annual consumption. We just need to see photos of your breaker panel. And then our design guys and gals, they create a 3D mock-up of your roof. And this program, Aurora, can tell them exactly when the light is hitting your roof. And you can see that the bright, almost yellow is where a lot of the light is hitting. So the bright orange is where you want to put panels. The kind you can see on the house on the left over on this side. This is kind of not so great for solar. It's kind of darker, but obviously this stuff all here is wonderful. So they put solar panels here. They use this is all the trees, and this is a program called LiDAR. And they use this program to essentially tell them the heights of those trees so that they know, again, they can add all that in, and we can say, okay, yeah, it's pretty unreal, actually. I fly the drone for shift, and I can say, hey, next week I'm going to go to this house. I'm going to fly the drone. I want to make sure there's some sunlight on the panels. What time of day is best? And they'll be like, okay, let's see, September 10th. Let's see. And they move the little mouse and they're like, oh, yeah, like 10 to 3, anywhere in there. You're great. And again, we do that because we want to be as accurate as possible with those proposals so that we can, because we're cutting checks if we're not right. And there's the finished product. There's the install, completed install. There's the design. Nice little Tesla in the driveway there. And so that's all done. Energy storage. Energy storage is a part of going solar. Again, mostly we do grid tie, so not a lot because installing a power wall into your home is about $24,000 just for one power wall that's going to give you 13 and a half kilowatt hours of battery life. So that'll do you a few days with phones and maybe a little TV, but if you're running a hair dryer or baseboard heaters, it's not going to last that long. It's $24,000. So we install Tesla Powerwalls and we have many other battery options in a lot of off-grid or mostly in places where the grid is not reliable. So a lot of Gulf Islands off Vancouver Island here, and we do a lot of battery storage here because when the power does go out, it could be 3-4 days. So they want to make sure that they are backed up. Those critical loads, the well pumps, whatever it may be, is backed up. So we do a lot of battery storage there. Batteries will become more important in the future. We see it in California, brownouts and things like that, and time of use billing, which is also a thing as well. So what a lot of people do is they use the cheap electricity from the grid or your solar panels to charge the battery up. And then when it's expensive, you don't draw from the grid, you just draw from your battery. So batteries are going to become the thing of the future. It's just at the moment right now, we don't do a ton of them. If somebody has a house overlooking the entire world, we've installed 9 in one house before because the person didn't want anything to drop. They wanted to completely live their normal life. So they wanted 9 power walls. So that is not an example of using less energy. So there are solutions though. But yeah, so that's batteries. The future. This is a product where at Shift, we're the exclusive installer of this product in Canada. We're really excited about it. Version 2.0 is coming out later this year. And essentially it is your roof. It's a solar metal roof. So instead of putting solar panels on your roof, it is your roof. And we see this being a lot on new homes because, again, you can build that new home with room for the panel, south facing, and you can set everybody up. So new builds, I think this is perfect. Retrofits are a little harder, older homes, all the things that come with older homes, and then, of course, angles and things like that. But this product's called Roof It. And so it installs just like a standing seam metal roof. As you can see on this home that we've done, you can see the solar just kind of, a little bit on the panels here, but standing from the street, you couldn't even tell. So this makes solar beautiful because a lot of people, including my wife, when I started, she's like, I don't want solar panels on my roof that everyone can see. And she's come around. She now wants them because of the benefits. But it is, some people don't want to see the big panel up on the roof. And so this is a wonderful solution for that. It is, you pay for that for sure. I think this is about $65 a square foot. And then $20 a square foot for the non-solar parts, because you wouldn't pay to put that in the shaded areas. A big project that we're really proud of in Delta. It is British Columbia's largest rooftop solar array, and we're really excited to be a part of this one. They could have, of course, put more solar panels on to produce more energy, but they really like the idea I'm not allowed to name this company, but you can obviously tell. They really like the idea of their logo being made out of solar panels. So you can see it right there, 2,592 panels, 1.2 megawatts, which is a big system for British Columbia. Of course, you go to places like Ontario, where you've got solar farms and all around, up by Ottawa. I have a podcast as well called the Solar PV Cast. There's my cheap plug for it. Radio guys gotta get a podcast going. So I host a podcast just all about everything solar, and I actually had a great conversation with a company. Their name escapes me right now, but it was a sheep farm that lives near a solar farm, and they actually just went up to the company that owns the solar farm and said, "Hey, can my sheep like help you out and graze under your solar panels?" And so saves them on cutting the grass. It's called agrivoltaics. Saves them on cutting the grass. The sheep get fed. Everybody wins. And it's an exciting part of solar and solar farms. Insects do incredibly well in solar farm fields. Anyways, Alberta and Ontario have much bigger solar arrays than this. But again, BC's energy cost with hydro is relatively cheap, but we're starting to see value in it here. So it's happening here. That's that. Hopefully, I didn't talk too fast or bore anyone, but by all means, let's have a conversation about solar.
Thank you, Chris. Lynn has a question, Chris. There are trees shading part of our south-facing part of our roof. How do we trust the solar panels will be effective?
Yeah, I mean, all it would take would just be a design. Honestly, it would just be a design, and then we could tell you for sure. Some people, I do not recommend this. Solar, we're here to help the planet. Some people have taken trees down to reap the full benefits of going solar, and I would hope have planted 2 trees in their place somewhere else. But yeah, it would just come down to getting our solar designers just to have a look at your property, and they could figure out the heights of those trees, and they could tell you exactly whether it was viable for you or not. That would be my recommendation there.
Awesome, thanks. For the ultra low overnight rate plan, the peak period is from 4 to 9 p.m. Obviously, there's less sun during that time. He was thinking of including a battery to support time-based control, load shifting, charging via solar, and then the ULO, I have no idea what that means, off-peak period, 11 to 7 a.m., and then discharge the battery during peak period. I believe this can be done, correct?
I believe as well. I believe. Yeah, like ultra low overnight. So essentially, it's kind of. I guess I look at it when I'm reading the questions. It's kind of two separate things. Solar is producing, and ultra low overnight. Again, you're dependent on the utilities, and it's three. There's 3 rate systems for that some utilities use: ultra low overnight, tiered, and Grant would know the third one, but time of use. And so my understanding is that's exactly a benefit of solar. You control your production. So you kind of control when you're drawing power from the utility company. With the ultra low overnight, they're essentially doing this to help the grid. They want to encourage people to use power overnight. So they're going to give you a discount if you run your dryer between 11 p.m. and 7 a.m. Rather than 4 and 9 p.m. when everyone comes home, everyone's plugging in their EVs, and the grid is feeling a lot of strain because everyone's using a lot of electricity. So it's their way of shedding the load, spreading the load around. So I don't see why. I think it's smart. If you can get a battery in there, then you charge it up and you use it from 4 to 9 p.m. And then you're not paying the utility rates. And then at the ultra low times, if you have to, you use the utility.
Yeah, so this is great. This is Grant. I just want to clear. So for the ULO, it's just the ultra low overnight. And it's running right now in Ontario like 2.8 cents a kilowatt hour. So it's really low. We got it particularly for our EV, but we also do our laundry over that time as well. So what I was hoping to do is get the solar, have it support during the sunshine, but then it may not have enough to charge the battery at the
Mhm.
same time.
Right.
Then at overnight, charge at the 2.8. It's basically just load shifting. So you're taking the load for, which is then running on, in Ontario anyway, renewables, or so either hydro or nuclear at that time. We're not doing peaker plants or things like that. So you're getting a cleaner electricity during that time as well. And just
Mhm.
shifting that load into the peak period, which is for this rate plan is between 4 and 9 p.m.
Yeah. What's the cost, between 4 and 9 per kilowatt hour?
28.6.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so going from basically 10 times
Yeah.
the amount. So
Yeah.
to
That's
utilize
great.
the battery,
Yeah.
like the really low rate, charge up whatever I have to on the battery if the solar doesn't charge it, and then
Totally.
discharge it during the peak rate.
Yeah.
That was
I think if a battery is something that you can do, I think it would be a good thing because in my mind, yes, it's great now that 2.8, like that's wow.
that, and that'll go away at some point when they decide to change
Exactly.
the rates. I understand that, but to
Yeah,
take advantage of it when we can.
totally. Yeah, and it sounds like you're right there and you're thinking about taking advantage of it. If it sticks around for a long time, I mean, I think, in the spring and the summer for sure, you're going to charge that battery and you're going to use everything that you need. In the winter when you're using the grid more, the utility more, then yeah, for sure, shift over, make sure you're capitalizing on that 2.8. But I feel like that's their way to kind of keep you from looking at other options because it is enticing. But like I said, the whole bonus of solar is that it doesn't matter what they do at that point, it's all yours. You're producing.
Absolutely, but if we're going to try, they're trying to encourage people with EVs to charge during that time
Yeah,
to take the load off
yeah,
when people get home. And almost every EV out there now allows you to set the time when you want to charge it. So
great. We need that in BC. I mean, we're only paying, 10, 11 cents for step one. But still, I think that's great to have that option.
okay, no, that answers the question. Thank you very much.
Okay, thanks, Grant.
So Lynn would like to know, is there still a limit to the number of homes that can move extra power to the grid? And what happens when it snows?
Great question. Yeah. As for a limit of number of homes that can move power to the grid, I do not believe so. However, I'm mostly speaking about BC. I don't know why Ontario would have that, but I'm gonna look into that more. So I don't want to say too much on that one. Um, and like you mean in general or like homes that you own?
When we got our quote a couple of years ago, we were told we had to apply in order to move electricity to the grid if we had solar panels, and that there was a limited number of
Mm,
homes that were able to, that there was a ceiling somehow. And
right.
so I just wondered if that was still the case.
I would hope not, because that seems ridiculous. Maybe a couple years ago and honestly, municipalities and provincial governments, they're still trying to figure out what the heck to do with solar. And that's when permitting comes into play. Because there's some ridiculous permits here, and there's so many hoops to jump through with local governments sometimes that some people just don't want to do it because it sucks. So I understand that. I hope that's something that they've removed if that was a thing. Um, but yeah, if you want, Lynn, we could totally look into it. Like I said, it's a new team in Ontario, but they would love to look into that and learn themselves if they haven't already got it figured out. So by all means, if you want to, it's been a couple years. The 2 years ago, there was 350-watt panels. Now it's 500-watt, 550-watt panels. So if you want an update, by all means, just send me a message or however you want to do that. And then the second question, remind me what that was again, sorry.
Snow build
Oh,
up.
yes. Yeah, so snow is an interesting one, especially when it comes to Ontario, because you get more than BC. But my understanding still is that don't touch it. We don't recommend people remove snow off the roof, A, because it's dangerous and we don't want anyone to get hurt. but our designers take an average annual snowfall into account when they're designing your system. So again, with that complimentary quote, you would see all of that in there, and it would say average annual snowfall. And so they would take that off your production because again, we want to be as accurate as possible. We don't want to overpromise and say you're going to be 100%, and then you get snow on your roof for a month, and it's like, oh, sorry, we didn't make that. So we would take that into an account, and then we say, look, it's taken into account all the information, all the numbers you have. Don't touch the snow on your roof because we've considered that already. And then being solar panels, being glass, they tend to melt, the snow would melt a little faster. We have installed snow guards in some places. Obviously, if it's over your front door, you don't want a bunch of snow coming off. But I talked to a gentleman about snow, and he said he bought a snow brush because he's like, no, I want to take advantage of the sun in the winter. And he paid $70 for his snow brush. And he said he will never see the return on investment for that snow brush because the power that he was losing having snow on his panels, he made up in half an hour in the summer. So the sun's so low in the winter, where we are in Canada, that you're not losing a ton. Yes, you're losing production for sure, but you'll make it up in that first beautiful spring, summer's sunny day in an hour. So we say, don't touch the snow.
Vladimir had a question. How many panels is usually needed for a 6 or 8 kilowatt project?
Yeah, great question. I'm just going to finish the snow one. If you did a ground mount, they have
Yeah.
No, it's fine. I'm going to answer that. I just had a thought, and I thought, oh, they have bifacial panels. And actually, the snow helps because when you install bifacial panels, ground mount mostly doesn't really work on the roof, but they're producing from the light from the sun, and then they're producing from the reflection off the snow on the backside, which is kind of cool. So there's lots of options out there. As for panels, 6 to 8 kilowatt, well, they're 500 watts a panel. So 12 panels for 6 kilowatt or 16 panels for 8 kilowatt. Really easy math right now because they're just 500 watts a panel. And again, that's the DC system size. So if you put 16 panels on, you will have an 8 kilowatt solar array. And when you translate that into AC, it just totally depends. Again, our quotes break all that down, and they would explain exactly what you're going to produce AC and annually.
So we've got 2 more things coming in from Grant. So the first one is Shift provides Tesla Powerwalls. What is recommended when adding a battery, micro inverters, or optimizers? I suspect optimizers so that you have fewer DC, AC, DC conversions.
Yeah, you know your stuff for sure. I've been learning a lot about the DC AC. My understanding is the Tesla Powerwall 3, which we are now installing. We're moving on from the 2. I should add, Tesla Powerwalls take about 6 months to a year to get. Elon doesn't send them out that fast to Canada, but the new ones, there was a DC. It was like DC to AC in the Powerwall, then back to D. Yeah, exactly what you said. But the new ones take out that, so you're actually losing less with those. In terms of what we install, I'm not positive, but I know we install all microinverters, even on Powerwall systems. So somebody on our engineering team made that decision. And so I can just say that we do microinverters for those. And yeah, the new Tesla Powerwall is going to address that issue because in the past with a generator, Tesla Powerwalls didn't play nice. So we installed Solarc, which is another company. But the Powerwall, apparently they've addressed that DC to AC loss.
Just to wrap up this portion, generally with grid-tied solar, when the grid goes down, the panels are stopped from producing. Is that correct?
Yes, that unless you have batteries. If you have batteries, you're laughing. Grid's down and the battery becomes the grid and you can keep making popcorn. If you don't have batteries and the grid is your battery, then yes, as soon as the power goes out within 0.03 of a millisecond, your entire system will stop producing as well. And that's because it's feeding the grid. So you don't want that person who's out there repairing the lines to get zapped because solar energy is being fed back into the grid. So it's a safety thing. Power goes down, your system goes down. And if you want to talk to somebody, let me know. Otherwise, thank you so much for your time.
Awesome. Thank you. Bye, everybody.